Hey all, this is your Chapter 9 lecture video, which means we are almost done. There's only 10 chapters in the entire text, so we are very quickly getting to the end of our textbook now. So Chapter 9 talks about graphics. So graphics are visuals that represent information, and I will have students who say that they either skim over or completely skip over graphics, which it is common to do that, I'll admit. But especially if you're a visual learner, graphics are extremely important. They're going to help you assist in your overall comprehension of what is going on in the text, because sometimes the text might be a little convoluted, there's a lot of data, whatever it might be, the graphic is there to help support and assist in your understanding of what the author is trying to convey to you in different forms. So that's what this chapter will talk about, is why we use graphics, the approach to read them effectively, and the different types of graphics. And so when you go to your Chapter 9 assignment video and your text and skills sheet, I'm going to kind of point out where a couple of these questions are coming from. So I'm going to have the PowerPoint up here in the background as well. So the purpose of this chapter is to understand how graphics enhance your reading and strategies to help you interpret different types of graphics. So in general, your strategy for reading graphics is going to be the same or very similar to actually reading and understanding printed text. So you're going to look at a graphic, whether it's a line graph, a chart, a diagram, a table, a float, it doesn't matter. You're going to look at the topic and main idea. What is this graphic about? What am I supposed to be learning about this particular graphic? How is it organized? Are there keys? Is there a legend? How are they measuring different things? What is the purpose? What type of graphic is it? What trends and patterns are happening in this? If it's a line graph, what is it showing me over time? If it's a bar graph, what's being compared? You want to confirm the source of data. If it's inside a textbook, they should naturally have like where they got the data from. If you're looking for it online, then you're going to try to look to see like when was this data collected, who collected the data, what was the grouping of people that was based on the data collection. Compare the information in the graphic to the text. Is it kind of just supporting the information? Is it going into more detail? Is it condensing it? What is it doing with information in the text part of the book or the article? And then how much do you need to remember? Do you have a test and it's going to get nitty gritty and you really need to look at the information? Or is this just to kind of provide you a picture, like a visual of the information? So how much of that you need to remember? All right. What graphics do, what they're used for in your text and skill sheet. This is your first part. So your Chapter 9 text and skill sheet will basically cover these three things right here in your actual textbook right here, right away. So graphics tend to help you condense. So if you have a lot of information, a lot of detail, a graphic might help boil it down, really just kind of put it down into one particular diagram or chart. So it's going to take pages of details and just condense it, boil it down to just the main points. It's also might clarify. So maybe the information is confusing. Maybe there's a lot of it. And so this is going to make it more clear for you. So the graphic might help clarify what's happening in the actual text, or a graphic might help convince you of something. So the text presents the information and then the graphic is like, here, look at it right here. I'm going to convince you that this information you just read is accurate, and here it is in visual format. Okay, so that's right here. Those three general reasons we use graphics. This next section talks about tips on how to make sure you are reading the graphics appropriately. This also correlates directly with a section on your text and skill sheet. It is also found right here, the little bullet points right there. So what do? You read the title. What's the title of this? Hopefully that's fairly natural to do anyway. Look at the title, look to see what is happening. Look to see the footnotes, or if there's like a little paragraph that introduces the graphic. Look at the labels, the X and Y axis. Look to see how are things organized. You also want to look to see if there's any outliers like trends or extremes, and then eventually draw conclusions and maybe even ask yourself some questions that would help understand the graphic a little bit more. Now, in general, there are 5 basic types of graphics: diagrams, tables, maps, graphs, and flowcharts. There are some sub-examples under each of these. This is also going to be on your text and skill sheet. And this is part of the, right here, you're going to see that they go through, and I'm going to point out examples of each of these as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We got diagrams. These are just like visuals or drawings of an object or a process. usually maybe to show something that's maybe complicated or how something flows. Our textbook chooses the example of like a respiratory system diagram. What I would also recommend, if I had you all in person, I would be doing this naturally, is I would be looking at these questions, not necessarily every single one, but just looking to see, can I answer these questions? You know, based on this question, can I find this in this case, the diagram? Is it true? Is it false? Can I tell? So I would just kind of quiz yourself, see if you can answer just a couple samplings of the questions from each type of graphic. So that's the first type of graphic, is a diagram showing pictures. Then you have tables. This is like the row and column organization, usually whenever you have a lot of data, a lot of numbers to try to show. So here's an example of a table. Again, if you want to test yourself, kind of look to see, can you answer these questions based on the information in the table? You can see you have your row and column configuration. We have our health indicators for selected nations. We have our labels. So lots of information there with data and statistics in years. So that's the whole point of tables, is to really try to get all of the facts and figures together in one, maybe easier to read piece of information versus writing that all in text. Then you have a map, which I always enjoy this conversation with my face-to-face students because I am of the generation, and I'm still in my 30s, so I'm not terribly old yet, where I remember growing up and had paper maps. You know, like that's how we went on vacation, is we got like a triptych printed off from AAA. You know, now we have GPS and everything. We don't have to worry about that quite as much, but there are still maps, like maps showing locations. And although we may not have like those physical printed out maps very often anymore, we still hopefully can read and understand and appreciate the purpose behind the maps. Excuse me. So here's an example of a global map, and in this case, they are coupling it with capital punishment, and you have your, your legend and all of these different things. So map is a 3D representation of, a 2D representation of usually a 3D situation. It's going to show different physical terrains and different areas. And again, the purpose of it is like to highlight maybe certain special characteristics or populations or geographic locations. From there, you will have pie graphs, circle down here, sometimes called a circle graph, where you're showing part to whole, the percentage to the entire thing. So it's really trying to show you like how each percentage is a fraction of the entire thing and how that works together. You have bar graphs. I think these are another very common type of graphic most people are familiar with, is showing like the horizontal or vertical bars in comparison between different items. This is when it becomes important again to look at your X and Y axis, to look at the different bars, what do they stand for? And so it's really kind of showing that comparison between different things. The cumulative bar graphs sometimes are not as familiar. But here's an example of a cumulative bar graph right here. Again, don't forget, you can always be quizzing yourself underneath there. So I keep doing that. A cumulative bar graph is showing like cumulative effects, which kind of add on top of one another to really show differences. So it's like a stacked bar graph. Sometimes people might refer to it as that. Then you have line graphs, another very common type of graphic, showing trends over time. So showing how things have changed or stayed the same or whatever it might be, whatever the purpose of the graphic is. So it's usually showing that frequency or distribution across a certain time period and looking at how that line has changed. And then we have flow charts, and these are like showing how a process works. So here's a good example of a flow chart. Talking about bill introduction in a house, you can see like the different steps and how you would go through that process. Okay, so I encourage you to look through the examples, the questions a little bit more thoroughly. Your PowerPoint really lines up very nicely with your text and skill sheet, a good part of it. So you can kind of use the PowerPoint to help guide you through that as well. And then if you want, like go into Google and just type in different, examples of line graphs, examples of cumulative bar graphs, so that you can kind of see some more examples. And then hopefully after this chapter, you'll pay a little bit more attention. Maybe really anytime you come across it in a textbook, like just spend a couple minutes looking at a graphic, really seeing how it can supplement and help support your understanding of the text. All right, that is chapter 9. Until next time.